The human and the chained girl. The auction square stank of fear, oil, and old blood. Voices shouted numbers. Chains clinked. Aliens of all kinds filled the dirty arena, waving credits, laughing, shouting insults at the poor beings dragged onto the platform. Kara kept her head down. She had learned long ago, never look up, never make eye contact, never show fear. The metal collar around her neck bit into her skin, always cold, always reminding her what she was now. Nothing. Less than nothing. Slaves were meat here. Tools. Property. The weak were sold to mines. The prettier ones became pets, or worse. She had no place. Not anymore. But today was worse than usual. Today she was being auctioned in the open, and the slaver made sure everyone knew she had no owner. A cursed mark, no value. They spat at her feet, laughing that even beasts would not want a broken girl like her. That's when the human appeared, Eli Mercer. He walked into the arena like he owned it. His coat was torn, stained with old blood. His boots crushed, broken, glass as if he didn't see it. His face was rough, tired, but his eyes burned with something she had never seen. Defiance. Humans were lower than dirt on this mining world. They were used for the worst jobs. No rights. No respect. Yet this man walked through the alien crowd like he feared no one. The slaver barked at him. "Humans have no coin here. Get lost, scum." Eli said nothing. He stared at the girl on the platform. The broken girl with hollow eyes. Kara dared not meet his gaze. She curled into herself tighter. But the human stepped closer. He took off his coat. The crowd laughed. They thought he was stripping to beg for mercy. Instead, he threw the bloodied coat over Kara's shivering shoulders. The arena fell silent. No one ever touched a slave like that. "You cold?" Eli asked, his voice like gravel. Kara froze. She had no answer. She had no voice. The slaver stormed forward. "She's property, human. You touch her, you buy her, and you can't afford a dog, let alone her." Eli smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had lost too much to care. He pulled out something from his pocket, a small metal coin, rusty, useless, old earth currency. Worth nothing here, he flipped it to the slaver. "I bought her," he said. The aliens roared with laughter. The slaver bared his fangs. "You think this is a joke? That coin can't buy you a rat's tail." Eli's eyes darkened. "It bought her," he said again. Kara trembled. She had seen men like him before. Brave, stupid, dead the next day, but something inside her stirred. Something she thought long dead. Hope, and that scared her more than the slaver's whip. The guards circled Eli, guns drawn, sharp sticks ready. The slaver grinned wide. "You broke the law, human. Touching her means you die like her." The human didn't back down. "I'm not leaving without her." Kara's lips parted, a sound escaped. Weak. Lost. Why, it was the first word she had spoken in months. Eli looked at her, his voice soft now. "Because no one deserves chains. Not even me." The guard stepped forward. One grabbed Eli's arm. Another slammed him to the dirt. Kara gasped. But Eli didn't fight back. He smiled up at her as the guards held him down. "Guess I bought more trouble than I planned," he joked. The slaver laughed. "This is what humans are good for, being fools." Kara's hands clenched into fists. For the first time, she lifted, her head high. Her collar glowed faintly. Old tech. Symbols from a forgotten empire. The crowd gasped. "She's marked," someone shouted. "She's the warlord's reject. She's cursed." Kara spoke loud, her voice cutting through the noise. "I choose him." Silence. In this lawless place, the words of a slave meant little. But when spoken by a girl with the cursed mark, the rules changed. The slaver froze. The guards hesitated. Eli blinked, confused. Kara stood tall, the human's coat over her shoulders, the collar burning like fire. "I choose him," she repeated louder. Whispers filled the air, ancient codes, forbidden rites. Even the slaver couldn't ignore them. The girl had invoked a bond, she had picked a master, and no one, not even the Empire, could refuse. Eli grinned up at her. "Well, looks like I'm yours now," he said. Kara dropped to her knees beside him. "No," she whispered. "I am yours." The crowd erupted in chaos. Guards scrambled. Guns raised. Alarms screamed through the station. Eli grabbed Kara's hand. They ran, and behind them, the arena shook as old laws woke from their slumber. Chains had been broken. The mark of defiance. The cold metal floor echoed under their frantic steps. Eli didn't look back. He didn't have to. The sound of boots, the shrill alarms, and the panicked yells behind him told him all he needed to know. They were hunted now. Marked. He had done it again. Opened his damn mouth, acted on impulse, and now had a whole station of slavers and mercenaries wanting his head. But this time, it wasn't just his head they were after. He glanced at the girl running beside him. She stumbled as if her legs had forgotten how to move freely. Her thin hands clutched his coat tight over her shoulders, her breath sharp, afraid, but her face was changing. No longer a hollow doll sitting in chains. There was something else in her now. A flicker of life, of fury. They ducked into a broken tunnel, the lights flickering above like dying stars. Eli slammed the door behind them, jamming it with a steel rod. They had maybe minutes before the guards would breach it. He leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. The girl stood still, her chest heaving. Her collar still glowed faintly, casting eerie patterns on the grime-covered walls. Eli pointed at it, confused. "What the hell did you do back there?" Her voice came out broken, but there was steel underneath. "I invoked the bond of choice," he frowned. "The what now?" She touched the collar, her face darkening with pain. "You made the mistake of touching me, offering your coat. It gave me the right. By ancient law, I claimed you as my master." Eli let out a bitter laugh. "Great. So now I'm the master of a cursed girl in a galaxy that hates us both." Her lips tightened. She didn't laugh. "You don't understand, human. This is no joke. I belong to the warlord of Agra Prime, the mark on my collar. It is his symbol. I was made to be his property, a breeder. But I failed him." She turned her back to him, pulling down the coat slightly. Eli sucked in a breath. The brand on her back was cruel, ugly, burned deep into her skin, a symbol of disgrace. "They threw me away like broken meat, but the law of my people still binds me. If I choose someone while marked, the Empire must honor it." She faced him now, tears mixing with fury in her glowing eyes. "You saved me, but you also marked yourself for death." Eli shrugged, wiping sweat from his brow. "Story of my life." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the distant pounding on the door. Kara broke the silence first. "Why did you do it? You knew what they'd do to you." Eli looked at her, his face softening. "Because I've been where you are. Chained. Forgotten. I know how it feels when no one looks at you like you matter." He paused, then chuckled dryly. "Besides, I never liked bullies." She stared at him like he was a strange wild creature. Maybe he was. Humans were known for being reckless, but this one, he was different. Kara lowered her head. "I am broken, human. Even if I chose you, I am nothing." Eli leaned forward. "Listen, girl, you're not nothing. You just forgot what you are. That's all chains do. They make you forget." The pounding on the door grew louder. Kara looked at him, a strange determination creeping into her voice. "You risked your life for a cursed slave." Eli smiled. "Looks like I did." Kara stood up, her legs steadier now. "Then I will risk mine for you." She pressed a button on her collar. A soft hum filled the air. The wall beside them flickered, revealing a hidden tunnel. Old escape routes. Only those marked can open them. Eli whistled. "Well, guess it's my lucky day." They slipped into the tunnel as the door behind them exploded, sending fire and smoke into the empty corridor they had just left. The darkness swallowed them. Kara led the way now. She moved like a shadow, more alive with every step. For the first time in years, she wasn't being dragged. She was leading. And deep inside, something stirred in her heart, a dangerous, impossible thing. Hope. They emerged into the loading docks, where rusty ships sat, abandoned. Eli spotted an old skiff barely held together with tape and prayers. He grinned. That one looks like it wants to fall apart mid-flight. Kara tilted her head. Then it suits us. As they powered up the dying engines, alarms screamed across the station. The Empire knew, and it was coming for them. Kara sat beside him, her voice steady now. You understand this means death, human? Eli looked at her. Death's fine. So is freedom. She watched him for a long moment, then whispered something he never expected to hear from a girl once shackled and silent. Then let's see if we can steal both. And together, they flew into the stars, chased across the stars. The stars stretched like wounds across the black canvas of space, but they offered no comfort to Eli or Kara as their battered skiff limped away from the mining station. The engines screamed, old and angry, threatening, to tear themselves apart with every jump through the cold void. The ship shuddered like a dying animal, yet somehow, it still flew. And for now, that was enough. Inside the small cockpit, Kara sat in silence, her eyes glued to the swirling chaos on the scanner. Red blips surrounded them like wolves circling prey. Ships from the station, bounty hunters, warlord scouts, they were all coming, and they weren't sending warnings. Eli adjusted the controls with the calmness of a man who had already made peace with dying. His hands worked fast, but his mind stayed slower, thoughtful as if each button he pressed was a conversation with fate itself. You've got a death wish, don't you, Mercer? He muttered under his breath. Kara heard him, but she said nothing. She sat rigid, gripping the cracked armrest, her breathing tight. The glow from her collar had faded, but the mark remained, a cursed brand that would make even the bravest mercenary hesitate to touch her. Yet she no longer shrank from it, not after what Eli had done. He had touched her when no one else dared. He had seen her when even she forgot she existed. Still, the weight of her choice settled heavy on her shoulders. She had dragged this stubborn human into her nightmare. She had made him an enemy of the Empire, all for a foolish act of defiance. But he didn't act like a man regretting his decision. He hummed softly to himself as the engines coughed and spat smoke, like a man driving toward a sunset instead of an oncoming storm. They won't stop chasing us, she finally said, breaking the tense silence. Eli didn't look at her. Then we keep running. Her fingers curled into fists. There is nowhere to run, human. I told you they will chase us across every system. There's only one way this ends. Eli finally looked at her, and for the first time since they met, she saw something raw in his eyes. Not anger, not frustration, conviction. You sound like you've already given up. Kara swallowed hard. I learned the truth long ago. You cannot escape the will of the strong. Eli leaned closer, his voice a whisper, yet it struck harder than any scream. Then we changed the truth. His words hung in the air, ridiculous and impossible, but something about the way he said them made her chest ache. You humans, you are mad, he smiled. Yeah, but sometimes madness is what breaks chains. Kara stared at him, her throat tightening. She had never met anyone like him. Back on her world, strength meant obedience. Power meant submission. You followed, or you bled. That was the law of the galaxy. But Eli Mercer didn't follow anyone. And for the first time she wondered, maybe she didn't have to either. Before she could speak, the ship's console exploded in alarms. A shadow fell over them, the ugly shape of a bounty frigate filling the viewport, its guns already warming up. Eli cursed. Looks like they're done playing. Kara stood, her body tense. I know a place, she said. He glanced at her. Hope it's got better options than this. She keyed in a set of coordinates. The nebula of forgotten kings. Eli's brow furrowed. Is that as friendly as It sounds? Kara shook her head. No, it's worse. The nebula eats ships, blind scanners. No one survives inside, except the desperate. Eli grinned. Good. Sounds like home. He punched the engines harder than the skiff could handle, ignoring the warning lights, ignoring the shaking. The bounty frigate fired. Energy beams sliced past them, too close. The skiff bucked wildly, alarms blaring. Kara braced herself. Even if we make it inside, the nebula will tear us apart. Eli shot her a look that made her stomach twist. Better to die free in the dark than live another day in chains. Kara had no answer. Maybe because deep inside she knew he was right. The skiff roared forward, plunging into the swirling purple mists of the nebula. Instantly, the world outside turned to madness. Lights bent, in unnatural ways. Ghost images of dead ships drifted in the fog. Shadows of beasts older than memory brushed against their hull. The ship's system screamed, blinded and lost. Kara clung to the seat, her heart pounding. Eli kept his hand steady on the controls. She whispered softly to herself, an old prayer from her people. But Eli shook his head. No prayers. No begging. If they want us dead, they'll have to drag us down themselves. And in that moment, even surrounded by endless night, Kara felt something impossible stirring inside her. For the first time since she was thrown away, she smiled. A small, broken smile, but real. She wasn't just running anymore. She was fighting. Scars and secrets, the darkness of the nebula of forgotten kings was like no place Eli had ever known. Out here, space didn't feel endless. It felt small, suffocating. The swirling violet mists wrapped around their ship like a grave shroud, blocking every star, swallowing every sound except the groaning of their half-dead engines. Static filled their scanners. The lights flickered. The skiff floated through the fog like a drifting coffin, lost, blind, forgotten. Inside the ship, Eli worked in silence, fixing frayed wires with bare hands, smearing grease on his face without care. His fingers were raw, cut from hours of patchwork. He'd been in bad situations before, trapped behind enemy lines, hunted on dead worlds, but this was something else. Even he had to admit it. The nebula played tricks on the mind. Whispers echoed from nowhere. Ghosts danced in the shadows. Eli knew some of it was just fear gnawing at his brain, but some of it maybe wasn't. And Kara? She hadn't spoken in hours. He found her sitting in the cold cargo bay, staring at nothing, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. She looked small now. Small and tired. Like a girl lost in a nightmare she couldn't wake from. Eli tossed her a food pack, but she didn't move. You planning on starving yourself now? He asked, his voice softer than usual. She blinked slowly, as if waking from a deep fog. There is no point, she whispered. Eli sat beside her, his back against the freezing metal wall. Guess I'm bad at giving up, he said. She looked at him, something bitter in her eyes. That is because you are human. You still think there's always another fight, another chance. My people, we know better. She pulled the coat tighter around her, but it didn't seem to warm her anymore. Do you know what they did to me, Eli Mercer? I was bred for one purpose, to bear warriors for the Empire. My body was designed, tested, perfected until it wasn't. Her voice cracked. She turned her back to him, but not fast enough to hide the tears crawling down her cheeks. I failed them. I couldn't carry. So they branded me. They paraded me as a warning to others. This is what happens to the weak, the broken. Eli said nothing for a long time. Then he rolled up his sleeve. Kara blinked. Scars. Ugly, jagged scars covered his arm. Burns, knife wounds, gunshots, marks of wars that had no medals, no victory songs. They tried to break me too, Eli said. But the funny thing about scars, Kara, they remind you that you survived. Kara stared at his arm. She reached out, hesitant as if touching his skin would curse her. But he didn't flinch. And slowly, her fingers brushed against the rough lines, tracing them gently like she was reading a story no one had ever told her. You're not broken, he said. Her lip trembled. I am. No, he said firmly. You're still breathing, you're still here. That means you've still got a say in who you are. Kara lowered her head. I don't know who I am anymore. Eli smiled softly. Then we figure it out together. In that cold cargo bay surrounded by death and fog, something shifted between them. It wasn't about saving each other anymore. It wasn't about debts or bonds. It was something quieter. More dangerous. They were choosing each other. Kara wiped her eyes quickly as if ashamed. You are a fool, human. Yeah, Eli said, grinning. But I'm your fool now. For the first time, she laughed. A shaky, broken sound, but it filled the ship like sunlight cracking through the nebula. They spent the next hours fixing the skiff side by side, hands stained with oil and sweat. Kara had never repaired a ship before, but Eli showed her. Patient, calm. Even when things exploded or shocked him. He taught her how to fight, not with brute strength, but like a human, dirty, clever, desperate, and she learned fast. It wasn't. Long before she moved like a fighter again, not a slave. When the engines finally roared back to life, Eli leaned back in the pilot's chair, exhausted, but smiling. Kara sat beside him, her hands resting calmly on her lap. He glanced at her. What, now, princess? She tensed, but his teasing smile made her relax. I'm no princess, she said. Eli shrugged. Could have fooled me. She looked out into the swirling dark. There's a human colony near this sector. They are small, forgotten. But the Empire plans to burn them soon. Eli raised an eyebrow. You want to help them? Kara's eyes glowed softly. I want to fight back. Eli grinned. Well, now you're talking like a human. Kara tilted her head. Teach me. Eli chuckled. I will. And as the skiff shot forward into the endless dark, Kara whispered something she never thought she would say again. Eli, if I am no one's, may I be yours? The human looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his eyes. Then he simply nodded. Always. And, together, they flew toward the next fight, toward something neither of them dared name yet. Hope. Warrior bride. The stars ahead were blood red. They blinked like watching eyes as the skiff broke free of the nebula's suffocating grip, sailing into a forgotten sector where wreckage drifted like shattered bones. Here, the space lanes were ghost roads, silent and abandoned. And at the center of it all, floating in the shadow of a dying sun, hung a tiny human colony, nothing more than a few domes of cracked glass on a frozen asteroid. Eli stared at it through the viewport, chewing on the corner of an old ration, bar like it was a cigar. He knew what he saw. Dead colony walking. Their systems were offline. Their defenses, if they ever had any, were rusting shells. The people here were waiting for the end. They just didn't know when it would come. Kara sat beside him, her posture different now, straighter, her chin raised, eyes hard. She no longer cowered in his coat. She wore it like armor. This place is doomed, Eli muttered. They know, Kara answered, voice flat. Then why are we here? Kara's gaze stayed locked on the colony. Because they need to see something before they die. Eli chuckled bitterly. You think two broken fools in a flying trash can are gonna change their minds? Kara finally looked at him, and something in her stare made Eli's heart tighten. Yes, she said simply. There was no bravado in her voice, no wild speeches, just certainty. Kara didn't believe in speeches anymore. She believed in action, and Eli, he found himself believing her. They landed on the outskirts of the colony at dusk. A few gaunt, hollow-eyed humans watched from behind broken fences as the two strangers walked toward the gathering square. No one welcomed them. No one spoke. They just watched, like animals waiting to see if the new arrivals were predators or prey. Kara stepped forward. She faced them alone. She pulled off the coat, revealing her thin, scarred frame, her collar now hanging around her neck like a badge of war. I was once like you, she said, her voice carrying through the cold air. waiting for death, believing I was nothing. But I met someone who reminded me that broken things can still fight. She held up the broken collar. They told me this made me weak, but now I make it my blade. Eli stepped beside her, tossing a makeshift rifle into the dirt. Anyone, still breathing, still has a choice, the humans murmured. Eli pointed at the horizon. Empire scouts are coming. You can wait for them, or you can stand. For a long moment, the crowd said nothing. Then a woman stepped forward, old, frail, but her eyes still sharp. And if we fight? She rasped. Kara didn't smile. She had learned that smiles were for victories, and they weren't there yet. Then you will die on your feet, not on your knees. The old woman stared at Kara, then she spat into the dirt. I like her. And slowly, the crowd stirred. They would fight. And Eli and Kara, they would teach them how. In the days that followed, the colony changed. The weak learned to fight dirty. The broken learned to shoot. The old learned to make traps from scraps. Kara trained them in hand-to-hand combat, using moves Eli had taught her. Moves that weren't in any soldier's manual. Moves meant to survive, not to impress. Eli worked on the defenses, wiring explosives, setting mines, building what he could from garbage and rust. They both knew it wouldn't be enough, but that wasn't the point. The point was that when the Empire came, they wouldn't find prey. They'd find wolves. On the eve of battle, Kara stood on the colony's highest dome, staring at the stars, her hair whipping in the cold wind. Eli found her there, silent as always. He didn't speak at first. When he did, his voice was rougher than usual. You scared, Kara? She nodded. Yes. Me too. They stood side by side in the dark, saying nothing more. But after a while, Kara turned to him. She placed her hand over his heart, feeling its stubborn beat. I have nothing to offer you, Eli Mercer. No home, no name, no future. Eli took her hand, pressing it tighter against his chest. Then offer me now. She blinked, and in a voice that trembled but didn't break, she whispered, Then make me your wife before we die. Eli stared at her, caught off guard for the first time since they met. But he didn't laugh. He didn't joke. Instead, he leaned in close, his forehead against hers. You're already mine, Kara. You just didn't know it. And in the cold of space, with death breathing down their necks, they sealed their bond with no words, no ceremony. Just a kiss. A vow between two broken things. And the stars watched in silence. The last stand of the broken ones. The night before the Empire came, the colony was deathly still. No laughter, no voices. Just the low hum of patched-up defenses and the bitter cold that crept through every crack in the walls. Eli sat alone by the dying fire, sharpening a blade that would never be sharp enough for what waited at dawn. Orant, him, the people of the colony sat in quiet circles holding each other, staring at the weapons they barely knew how to use. They were not soldiers, they were miners, broken families, lost souls. And yet, they had chosen to stand. That meant something, Eli told himself. But even as he thought it, doubt gnawed at him. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't a hero. He was a man who had spent his life running, fighting, bleeding for causes that never remembered his name. And now once again he found himself at the edge of the galaxy, holding the line for people he had no reason to save. Except one. Kara. She moved. Through the crowds like a ghost, silent, watchful, more warrior than woman now. She checked weapons, adjusted makeshift armor, whispered words in the ears of children who clung to their mothers. But Eli could see it in her eyes. She was holding herself together by sheer will. She had chosen to lead them. She had chosen to stand beside Eli. But inside, she feared she had led them all into a grave. When the two finally stood alone on the hill overlooking the colony, the horizon glowed red. The Empire ships were near. Kara gripped the spear she had forged from her broken collar. It pulsed faintly, a weapon forged from the chains that once held her down. She could feel the weight of every step she had taken since the mining station. She was no longer a slave, no longer a discarded piece of property. She was something else now. But what? A warrior? A rebel? A wife? She turned to Eli, her voice cracking like glass under pressure. "They will crush us, Eli." He didn't argue. He didn't lie. "They might," he said. She breathed deep. "But if we fall here, what will they remember? Another dead colony? Another lost world?" Eli's smile was grim, tired, but there was fire still burning in his eyes. "No. They'll remember that even broken people can make giants bleed." Kara swallowed hard. "I'm scared." He touched her face gently. "Me too." And that was all they needed to say. The first ships appeared at dawn, their shadows blotting out the weak sun. Massive frigates, dropships, armored beasts bristling, with guns. The Empire did not send warnings. They descended like gods, expecting submission. What they found instead was Kara. She stood alone at the gate as the first dropship landed, its engine sending waves of heat and dust across the frozen earth. The crowd behind her held their breath. From the ship stepped the warlord's champion, a towering creature draped in black steel, his face hidden behind a cruel mask. The champion looked down at Kara as if she were a worm. "You dare defy the will of Agra Prime?" His voice boomed, metal and fury. Kara lifted her spear. "I am Kara, daughter of the cast-off, slave of no one. I am the wife of a human, and I fight for them now." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Eli froze. Wife. She had said it before everyone. She had claimed him, claimed herself. The champion sneered. "Then you will die his widow." They fought in the open, watched by both armies. Kara moved with a mix of alien grace and human rage. The champion fought like a god, but Kara fought like something that refused to die. She didn't match him in strength. She didn't have to. She fought dirty. Human. Eli shouted from the crowd, his fists clenched. "Don't fight like them, Kara. Fight like us." And she did. She broke the champion's leg with a low strike. She blinded him with dirt. She stabbed, not to kill, but to humiliate. She made him bleed, made him scream. And when she stood over him, breathing hard, covered in blood and dirt, she didn't finish him with a clean strike. She let him crawl back to his ship. She let them see what a broken girl could do. The Empire's fleet paused. They withdrew, not because they were defeated, but because they were humiliated. They had come to crush insects. Instead, they had bled in front of the whole colony. In front of the galaxy, the people roared. They weren't dead. They weren't prey. They were warriors now. And as the people lifted Kara and Eli on their shoulders, Kara clung to her husband's hand, her voice soft, private, trembling with relief. "We did it, Eli." He squeezed her hand back. "No, you did it, wife." And for the first time since they met, Kara let herself cry without shame. The broken had made a stand, and the galaxy would never forget it. Chains broken, fate forged. The days after the battle passed like fragile dreams. The people of the colony rebuilt, but not as victims. They moved with pride now, with purpose. They wore their scars openly, as symbols of defiance, of survival. They weren't just miners or exiles anymore. They were the ones who had made the Empire bleed, and that meant the entire galaxy watched them now. Ships came from forgotten human colonies, from outlaw fleets, from broken tribes who had only heard rumors of the girl who defied a warlord and the human who taught her how. Eli sat on the cracked steps of the main dome, his rifle across his knees, his face shaded by the worn-out hat Kara had patched for him. He watched the people moving, talking, laughing. It felt strange, almost too good to be real. He had spent his life running from fights, from pain, from himself. But somehow, in the middle of nowhere, with death still whispering from the stars above, he had found something he never thought he'd have. Home. And her. Kara stood at the center of it all, not as a slave, not as a warrior, but as something entirely new. She was both. She was neither. She was Kara, once a chained girl, now a legend. She wore no crown. She commanded no army. Yet people came to her for guidance, for strength, for hope. And she gave it. Not with speeches, not with promises, but with her presence, her scars, her quiet defiance. At night they sat together under the hollowed sky where no stars dared shine. She would lean against Eli, resting her head on his shoulder, her hands tracing the old scars on his arm, the new ones on his chest. They spoke little. They didn't need to. On the third night after the Empire fled, a message came. A hologram flickered in the center of the colony square, crackling with static. It was from the warlord himself. His face, hidden behind layers of ceremonial armor, filled the sky like a god staring down at ants. "You humiliated me, slave," his voice boomed, cold and sharp like a blade. "You humiliated my empire." The people stood frozen, listening. "But you did more than that. You made them see you." Kara stood tall, meeting the hologram's gaze. "You may think you have won a victory here, but the galaxy is vast, and I am patient. You and your human will die. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you will die knowing I still rule." Kara stepped forward. Her voice, calm and steady, filled the square. "You will rule nothing, warlord, because we took the only thing that mattered." "And what is that?" the hologram sneered. "Our freedom," Kara answered. The crowd erupted in cheers. The warlord's face flickered, then vanished. And in that moment, Kara understood something Eli had known all along. The fight was never about winning. It was about never bowing. About living free. Later that night, Kara sat with Eli outside their small home, built from the wreckage of their old skiff, patched, together with stubborn hands and quiet love. "I never thought I would have this," she whispered. "This?" Eli asked, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "A place. A name. Someone." Eli chuckled softly. "You've always had a name, Kara. You just forgot it." She smiled, leaning into him. "And you? What do you have now, human?" Eli thought for a moment. "Scars. A busted knee. And a wife who's probably more dangerous than the whole damn empire." Kara laughed, a full, unbroken laugh that filled the night air. "I suppose that makes us both dangerous." Eli tilted his head. "No, it makes us free." They sat in silence, watching the flickering fires of the colony, the hum of life slowly returning to a place that was once forgotten. And for the first time, Kara let herself dream, not of escape, not of survival, but of building something better, together, because they weren't just survivors anymore. They were something new. They were the spark in the dark, the human and the slave girl who broke her chains, and their story was just beginning.